The Chernobyl disaster, which occurred in April 1986, is one of the most serious man-made disasters in the history of mankind. On April 26, 1986, an explosion occurred in Unit 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine, near the city of Pripyat. The explosion was caused by a malfunction in reactor number 4 during safety tests. As a result of the explosion and subsequent fire, a large amount of radioactive material was released. The explosion and the release of radioactive substances led to the formation of radioactive clouds that spread in the atmosphere and covered much of Europe. About 30 people died as a direct result of the explosion or in the first days afterward from acute radiation sickness. Thousands of people, including liquidators, were exposed to high levels of radiation and later succumbed to radiation sickness. A large area around the Chernobyl power plant was declared an exclusion zone, where animals and humans were forbidden to live for long periods of time. Years after the disaster, an increase in cancer cases, birth defects, and other radiation-related diseases was noticed among both survivors and the next generations. Thousands of servicemen, workers, and specialists from all over the Soviet Union were mobilized to eliminate the consequences of the disaster. Measures were taken to reduce the spread of radiation, including the construction of a concrete sarcophagus over the damaged reactor. Activities were carried out to clean up and reclaim areas contaminated by radiation. As a result of the disaster, significant changes were made to safety standards and regulations at nuclear power plants around the world. The events of September 11, 2001, when the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City were destroyed, left a deep mark on human history. At 8:46 a.m., Tuesday, September 11, 2001, American terrorists, members of the Al-Qaeda network, hijacked 2 passenger planes, Boeing 767s, and aimed them directly at the 2 twin skyscrapers that were the symbol of the World Trade Center in New York City. At 8:46 a.m., the first plane, American Airlines Flight 11, crashed into the North Tower. 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., the second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, crashed into the South Tower. As a result of the impact, both towers began to burn and then collapsed within hours. The fall of the towers caused tremendous destruction and loss of life. Thousands of people died, including passengers aboard the airplanes, people inside the buildings, and rescue workers. Subsequent fires and collapses caused severe damage to other World Trade Center buildings and neighboring structures. This terrorist attack was the largest and most destructive in US history and caused a tremendous amount of grief and suffering for millions of people around the world. The aftermath of the attacks led to changes in security policy both inside and outside the US and the launch of a global fight against terrorism. Immediately after the attacks, a major rescue and relief operation was launched. It lasted for many weeks. An intensive investigation followed, and the organizers and participants in the terrorist attacks, including Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, were identified and arrested. The US and its allies launched a global campaign against terrorism, including military operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. The tsunami that occurred in the Indian Ocean on December 26, 2004, was one of the most destructive natural disasters in modern history. The magnitude 9.1, 9.3 earthquake occurred in the northern Indian Ocean, near the west coast of Sumatra Island in Indonesia. The earthquake was one of the strongest ever recorded and caused the ocean floor to instantly shift, causing massive tsunamis to form. The tsunami spread across the Indian Ocean, striking the coasts of countries including Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, Myanmar, Maldives, Malaysia, Seychelles, Somalia, and others. More than 230,000 people died as a result of the tsunami. Thousands went missing, and hundreds of thousands lost their homes and livelihoods. The devastating impact of the tsunami caused gigantic losses in lives, real estate, economy, and infrastructure, especially in major tourist areas. Immediately after the disaster, international aid in the form of medical teams, food, water, clothing, building materials, and other resources were sent to the disaster site. Many countries and humanitarian organizations around the world provided support and assistance to the victims. The nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki are two of the most devastating events in human history that occurred during World War II. On August 6, 1945, an American B-29 warplane named Enola Gay dropped an atomic bomb, dubbed Little Boy, on the city of Hiroshima in Japan. The explosion occurred in the air above the city, creating immense destruction and fires on the surface. The attack killed tens of thousands of people and completely destroyed a huge area of the city. On August 9, 1945, another American B-29, called Boxcar, dropped a second atomic bomb, called Fat Man, on the city of Nagasaki, located in southern Japan. The explosion also caused massive destruction, fires, and deaths. Although the damage was slightly less than Hiroshima, Nagasaki still became another symbol of destruction and suffering. The nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki caused tremendous loss of life and destruction. Many people died directly from the explosions and radiation, and many others faced serious consequences of radiation contamination and disease. The attacks were the first and so far only use of nuclear weapons in warfare. After the bombings, Japan declared surrender, thus ending World War II. The nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki raised serious questions in the world community about the moral, ethical, and humanitarian consequences of the use of nuclear weapons. These attacks spurred the creation of international efforts to control nuclear weapons and prevent nuclear war. For example, the United Nations Commission on the Peaceful Uses of Atomic Energy, UNESCO, was established in 1946. The plague epidemic, also known as the Black Death, is one of the most devastating episodes in human history. The plague epidemic began in 1347 when a Georgian merchant ship arrived at the port of Messina on the island of Sicily. Upon arrival, the ship already had dead and sick crew members on board. The rapidly spreading bacterium Yersinia pestis, transmitted by fleas that live on rats, was the cause of the epidemic. Most victims became infected through flea bites. The plague manifested itself in several forms, including bubonic, pneumonic, and septic. Symptoms included elevated temperature, headache, vomiting, coughing, bright red spots on the skin, swollen lymph nodes, etc. In most cases, the disease resulted in death within a few days. The epidemic spread rapidly throughout Europe and then the world, wiping out huge numbers of the population. The plague epidemic resulted in a huge loss of life. Estimates of the dead range from 75 to 200 million people, which was between 30% and 60% of Europe's population. The Black Death had a major impact on social and economic life. Agriculture, commerce, industry, and cultural life were severely disrupted by the massive loss of population. The Exxon Valdez disaster is one of the most serious environmental accidents in US history, occurring in March 1989. Here is more information about it. On March 24, 1989, the tanker Exxon Valdez, carrying about 11 million gallons of crude oil, collided with a reef near the coast of Alaska in Prince William Strait. The collision caused more than 260,000 barrels of oil to leak into the open sea, resulting in a huge environmental disaster. The oil spread over a huge area including the Alaskan coast, bays and islands, and into the coastal waters of Canada. The largest marine pollution in US history caused severe damage to the ecosystem and native flora and fauna. Many species of fish, birds and marine mammals have been affected by the pollution. Local fisheries and the tourism industry were severely affected by the disaster. Many local businesses and jobs were lost. The process of cleaning up and restoring coastal areas and waters was long and costly. ExxonMobil spent billions of dollars cleaning up after the disaster. The March 11, 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan was one of the most devastating natural disasters in the country's history. On March 11, 2011, a magnitude 9.00 earthquake struck the east coast of Japan. It was the strongest earthquake in Japan's history and one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded in the world. The earthquake triggered a huge tsunami that hit the coast with wave heights of up to 40 meters. The tsunami waves covered tens of kilometers of coastal areas, causing massive destruction and killing thousands of people. The earthquake caused severe damage at the Fukushima nuclear power plant in Japan, leading to a late secondary disaster, a massive release of radiation after reactor cooling systems malfunctioned. It became the largest nuclear accident since the Chernobyl disaster. More than 15,000 people died, tens of thousands were injured, and many people were left homeless and lost their families. Many cities and towns in coastal areas have been completely destroyed or severely damaged. Infrastructure, homes, schools, hospitals, and other facilities were destroyed. After the Fukushima nuclear power plant accident, many areas were contaminated with radiation, leading to the evacuation of hundreds of thousands of people and causing huge societal and environmental problems. Thank you all for watching. In this video, you learned about the worst catastrophes. Write in the comments if you have anything to add or ask. I would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel and put a like on this video. Good luck, everyone.